we have a principle here that even though the first city needs the it needs the water for kibbutz, but that's the surplus water above and beyond shtia. The other city needs the water for shtia, and therefore you have to give up the water. The first city has to give the water for the benefit of the second city, because the second city is going to Chas Shalom perish. They don't have water. And this is the Shita of the Chachamim. Now we get to Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi Omer Kvisasan Kodemes L'chai Acher. This is a pella. The need for washing one's clothes, or the city washing its clothes, is so great that it overrides the need of the next door city to drink the water.
That seems odd.
Very pelagic, right?
Yeah.
So I have here a note in the name of the Haflah, and he writes, we're not talking about a case where the other city is going to die of thirst, because for sure Rabbi Yossi would not give kedima to this city for kibbutz above the other city that needs it to survive. That's impossible. But rather, there's a possibility for the second city to import water. And he says, Hadavar karuch b'tircha meruba. He doesn't exactly spell it out, but it probably is a tremendous undertaking to get enough water for the second city from some other source. Probably is very expensive as well. And therefore, says Rabbi Yossi, you might think that in such a case, as the Chachamim ruled in this brisa, that for the benefit of the other city, the city that possesses the mine would have to give up their possession in order to avoid the tremendous pressure and tircha that the other city will have to go through to get water to drink. And Rabbi Yossi says, no, I'm going to upgrade the significance of kibbutz to such extent that it takes priority over the other cities' need to go out there with tircha, meruba, and to try to get water to survive. So now the Gemara is ready for the question, the apparent contradiction between two positions, two statements of Rabbi Yossi. And the Gemara is going to apply the following logic. It's a kal vachomer. Rabbi Yossi in the Mishnah here in Nedarim was of the opinion that that rechitza is not called ini nefesh, but here he upgrades the status of kibbutz, of cleaning your garments, to such an extent that it's going to impact on the other city and give priority to the first city. So here's the kal vachomer. Now we're on the last line now on Daf Pei Amid Beis, about to turn to Pei Aleph. Hashta kvisa. Here in the case of kvisa, which is not a direct physical impact on the body, it's only cleanliness of the clothes, and nevertheless, Amar Rabbi Yossi, yesh ba tsar, it's considered such a tsar, and an inui nefesh, such a physical affliction when your clothes cannot be cleaned, body is kolshkein. How much is not washing the body is certainly inu nefesh. If abstaining or what's the word I need? If non-cleaning of the clothing is considered inu nefesh, how much more so not washing the body is inu nefesh?
Cleaning of the body, yeah.
And yet, Rabbi Yossi categorizes rechitza as not being a problem of ini nefesh. It doesn't warrant or deserve the categorization as ini nefesh. But yet, Kibbutz is inui nefesh. How do we reconcile that? Amri, and the Gemara answers the following: Ein kvisa limel Rav Yossi. Kvisa is more severe, according to Rav Yossi, than rechitza. Could you imagine? To guarantee that your clothes are clean is more significant than guaranteeing that your body is clean. This, I'd love to ask the sociologists, psychologists, if this is so. I remember during one of the wars, I don't remember which war it was, I was teaching in a Hesdi yeshiva, and the Chayalim told me that for 6 months they couldn't clean their clothes. It was impossible. So again, these are the two principles, and there's no contradiction. One principle is that the inability to clean your clothes is inui nefesh, and the other principle is the inability to wash your body is not called inui nefesh. The Omar Shmuel, Hi Irbubisa de Reisha. Okay, so now we have two different. It's 3 different statements of Shmuel. Shmuel is comparing the irbuv, we'll explain what that means, of the head, meaning the hair, to the irbuv of the clothing, and then to the irbuv of the body itself. So let's go through these 3. So the first one is called Arbubisa Deresha, which means that the head is full of filth, the hair is full of lice and dirt. That will bring a state of masya, it brings to a state lidei avira, of blindness. Shmuel was a great physician. That's what he claims. Number 2, bavisa de money, the filth of one's clothing, masya lidei shamumisa, it brings to shigaon. You literally lose your mind. Arbuvisa de gufa, if your body is not clean, masya lidei shichli vekeve, it will generate all sorts of boils and suffering of the skin. So it's kind of like the following: if the head is not clean, then we need to call in an ophthalmologist. If the clothing are not clean, we need to call a psychiatrist. And if the body is not clean, then we need to call a what's called a skin man,
epidemiologist, I don't know.
No, what's it called? A person,
A skin doctor.
Yeah, what's it called?
A skin doctor.
Okay, we'll call it a skin doctor, but yeah.
Yeah, I know.
You're also
skin
blanking out.
doctor.
Okay. Yeah.
What's a skin doctor?
A dermatologist. Took me a while till it.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah.
I don't know how it is in Canada, but here in these parts, it's almost impossible to
dermatologist.
To get an appointment with a dermatologist.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're backed up for months. Yeah, I mean the good ones anyway. So in any event, the Gemara is proving now that the absence of washing the body will cause physical boils and cracks in the skin, all sorts of psaim on the body, dermatological problems, but those can be reversed. Those can be healed. But the absence of kibus, of cleaning the clothes, which cause a person to be deranged, Rahman al-Litzan, that is irreversible. There's no refuah for that. And therefore, the harmful impact of minias kvisa is that much greater than minias rechitza. That's why Rabbi Yossi holds that for minias rechitza, that's not called inui nefesh, but minias kibus is called ibud nefesh. And at this point, the Gemara now jumps into an agadita. Sholchu misam. From Eretz Yisrael, they sent the following message to Bavel. Hizar babuvisa, be very careful to wash your clothing and not to come to Irbuv Rosh to wash your hair, and finally to wash your body. So that's called ubibisa. So the word ubibisa is a generic term that includes all those three subcategories. So be very careful to avoid ubivisa. Make sure that your clothing is clean, your hair is well shampooed, and your body is bathed. Number 2, hizaru b'chabura. Make sure that you learn Torah in a group. Not on your own, but together with a group. And hizaru b'bnei aniyim, and be careful to teach Torah to the children of the poor. Shemehem teitzei Torah. From the children of the destitute, there will be a generation of Torah. Now the Chassam Sofer is going to, in his brilliant insight, is going to try to show the connection between A, B, and C. But how do we know Shemehem Teitzei Torah Shenemar, a pasuk in Bamidbar Perikov Daled Yizal Mayim Midolyo? And what does the word Midolyo mean? Mayim, we know, is called Torah. Is a symbol of Torah, and the word Midolyo means Midalim. We're darshaning as if it said Midalim, Dalim of the poor people. So Mayim, meaning Torah, will come from the poor. Shemehem Teitzei Torah. So the Chassam Sofer wants to connect these three. And he says the following, that even though a person has to be careful from Irbubisa, and therefore he might think, well, you know what? This is like today in post-COVID. You know, you have people who still wear masks. Again, I'm not judging anybody. Don't get me wrong. But as a result, you know, they don't visit people. They're so scared about COVID.
Right.
They don't go to hospitals. They don't even come to shul to daven. You know, they're still totally homebound. I don't know if you know any people like that. And even when they break away and show up, they keep their distance, social distancing. And that's what he wants to, what'd he say?
Yeah, no, I know. We
You
have
know
the
what I
same
mean?
thing for a few
So
people.
that's what he's warning you about. He's saying, don't be afraid to teach Torah to the poor people, even though you have to be very careful about the three manifestations of Irbubisa. Maybe the poor people don't have, you know, such quick access to the local baths and so forth. You know, they had those merchatzot. Number 2, the Gemara says in Shabbos on Daf Chaf Hey Amid Beis that the poor people didn't have access to the Batei Merchatzos. The Gemara in Sanhedrin Chaf Daled Amid Aleph says that Lo ayu nochim zela ze ba'alocha. They used to fight with each other in halacha. And that's what the Chassam Sofer says. The second azhara here is to be careful that you should be nochim zelazeh. And the third thing is, besides chabura, is anir. So that's what he was sending a message from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel on these three levels of azharos. Since they didn't have such access to merchetzos, they had to be super careful about erbavisa. And since they had frictions, again in Bavel, I guess it was typical that they would fight in halacha, and they got carried away with these fights, with these arguments. Then they have to be very careful that it shouldn't lead to a point at which they don't want to learn together, and each one's going to learn on his own. And also, there's a lot of poverty apparently in Bavel. They were richer at that point in Eretz Yisrael, and they have to be very careful with the Bnei Aniyim because mehem teitzei Torah. The Gemara asks, "Ma ein mitzuyin Talmidei Chacham lotzeis Talmidei Chacham ibneihem?" Why is it that we find very often that Torah scholars, that children, or maybe their grandchildren, according to one pshat here in the name of the Tiferes Tzion, their grandchildren will not be dedicated to Torah study, even though with regard to Aniyim, those poor people will have children that are dedicated to Torah. Rav Yosef, this was part of a divine plan. Shelo Yomru HaTorah Yerusha Hi Lahem. If the Torah goes from one generation to the other, they're going to think, oh, you know what? We don't have to work hard in Torah. It's a Yerusha. We inherit it. Rav Sheshes Brei the Rav Idi gives another alternative explanation as to why Hashem, in his divine wisdom, saw to it that the next generation of Talmidei Chacham will not necessarily be dedicated to Torah. Kidei shelo yisgadru al hatzibur. He translates here yisgadru as yisgo. You know, once a person sees, well, my children are Talmidei Chacham, my grandchildren are Talmidei Chacham, he becomes a Bal Gaiva. You know, it starts getting to his head. And he lords it over the tzibur. He says here, al hatzibur mean lehistorer al hatzibur. That's a pasuk. That's a word which appears in Parshas Korach. Listorer, you know, to lord it over the tzibur. You know, you become so full of yourself that you almost put down the tzibur. Marzuch Omer, a third explanation. Why is it that the Hashkach has it that from the Bnei and Talmidei Chacham there won't necessarily be Torah scholars? Those Talmidei Chacham misgabrim, and again he translates this word as misgoyim, as they're full of themselves, al hatzibur. So they already reached that stage where they are misgoyim al hatzibur, and they get punished for that. As a result, their children will not be Torah scholars. Rav Ashi Omer, mishum dekaru li'inshi chamori. Wow. The Talmidei Chachamim will give an appellation, they will describe the people who are not learning Torah as if they were donkeys, meaning they're imbeciles. So because of that zilzul, therefore, their derisive words against the other people who are not such scholars, they themselves will not produce Talmidei Chacham. Ravina Omer she'ein mevarchim et Torah tchila. This is one of the most famous lines in Shas. Everybody and their uncle darshans about this. That the Talmidei Chachamim did not make the bracha over Torah before they engaged in Torah study, and that's a kind of a zilzul in Torah, and therefore they're not zocha that their children will be oskim b'Torah. Now, why is this Avera so severe? Because they didn't make the bracha before the study of Torah, the Omer of Yudam Arav. And now we're going to see something about the Golus itself. My Dechsiv, a pasuk in the 9th chapter of Yirmiyah, Mia Isha Chacham v'Yovin Ezos, Vashadiber pi Hashem elav yagido alma of the aretz. Why did we lose our rights to the land of Israel? And Dover said this question of Mia Ish Hachacham v'Yavanezos was asked Nishal l'Chachamim, okay, and Linevim. V'lo Pirshu, they couldn't come up with an adequate answer. What caused the exile, and why were the Jews sent out after the Churban? Till God Himself had to give us the answer. T'chsiv, Vayomer Hashem al azvamis torasi. They left my Torah, they forsake my Torah. So the Gemara asks, Hainu lo shamu b'koli, hainu lo holchu ba. The end of the pasuk says lo shamu b'koli v'lo holchu ba, and it's repetitious. Why the repetitive language? Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav she'ein mevarchem haTorah tchila. When the pasuk says al azvam es torasi, it's referring to the fact that they omitted the bracha on Torah before they engaged in Torah study. And that means, according to the Ran, they did not learn Torah lishma. It wasn't significant in their eyes, and they didn't make a bracha on the Torah that they studied. And that's called lo holchu ba. Lo holchu ba means lo lamdu ha-Torah lishma. And as a result of the fact that they didn't study Torah lishma, they didn't give the chashivas to Torah that they should have given. And if Torah is not chashuv beineim to make a bracha on it, then it's lo holchu ba. They didn't learn Torah lishma. And as a result, we end up with exile. Now we get back to Rabbi Yossi, who holds that the need for mayim to wash one's clothes in the case of the first city takes precedence and priority over the need for water in another city to drink. Isi bar Yehuda lo asal mesifta de Rabbi Yossi tlasi Yomi. For 3 consecutive days, Isi did not show up to the yeshiva of Yossi. Ashkeche vardimus Rabbi Yossi. So Vardimus, very strange name, the son of Rabbi Yossi, encountered Isi bar Yehuda. So we now have a meeting between Vardimus and Isi. Amaleh. So Vardimus says to Isi bar Yehuda, my time mar, why did my master, meaning he spoke to him in third person, you didn't come le base midrasha, the Abba, my father's base medrash, hot tlasi yomim for 3 consecutive days. Amalei, so Isi responded, ki tame de'avuch lo yadana hecha isai. Your father quotes a din, your father Rabbi Yossi, and I don't know where he got it from. I don't find the source for it. So it sounds like Isi was researching what he heard from Rabbi Yossi and tried to come up with a source. He was so farnumit, he was so fatumult with it, that he didn't show up in the base medrash for 3 days. Amalei, Vardimus says to him, Lema mar maika amarle, tell me what din you heard from my father. Dilma, perhaps, Yodana Taimi, I'll tell you where he got it from. Amalei, Sisi said the following, Lahadesanya, this is what was recorded in the Brisa. Rabbi Yossi Omer Kvisasa called me L'chai Acherim. Is Kraminolan. From whence did your father Rabbi Yossi derive this drasha to conclude that Kvisa comes before the very life of the other city? Amalei Dichsiv, the pasuk says about Midbar Lamed Hey, Umigresheim Yu Levehem Tom Ulechol Chayasam. So my Chayasam, Well, what does this word chayasam mean? Lechol chayasam. Ilema chaya, if it means to raise animals, halo chaya michal behemah. A chaya is included under the generic term behemah. And it says in the pasuk migrasheim you lebehemta. So why does it afterwards have to say chayasam if it already says lebehemta? Elamai, what does chayasam mean? Chiyusa mamish means their life. They're very chiyus. So the Gemara says pshita. I don't need you to interpret the pasuk that way, because again, if you're talking about chiyusa mamish, so what's the point in the pasuk here? Now this pasuk is referring to the Orei Leviim, and around the Orei Leviim there was what's called a migrash. That's a shetach panui, an open area for the behemos, for the possessions of the Leviim, and for all tzarkei chiyusa. Whatever they needed, they had this extra migrash in front of their homes. And that's where they did whatever they had to do. This migrash. So the Gemara now darshins elamai chayasam. What does chayasam mean? Chiyusa mamish. That they'll live there. What a pshita. So the Gemara says again, what's the chiddush here? Elav kvisa, but rather the word chiyasam is a reference to the kvisa, which is considered chaye nefesh. It's tzorah chaye nefesh. Da'ika tzara dibruvisa. Because with the absence of washing their clothes, there'll be tzara guf as a result of the irbuv and the lichluch of their begadim, and it could cause shigaon. It might cause them to lose their faculties, their intellectual faculties. So since the Torah calls kvisa chayasam, then it means it comes under chayecha kodmet. And that's why Rabbi Yossi came to the conclusion that the kvisasam of the first city trumps the shtia of the second city. Oh, Rabbi Yossi, we learned in the Mishnah, Ein elu minias rechitza is not called nidre inu nefesh. Boilu Rabbi Yossi, who holds that abstinence from rechitza and other kinds of cosmetics apparently does not qualify as inu nefesh, and the Baal cannot be made for those nidarim. My ma'ushe yefer mishum dvarim shebeino veina. In other words, the Baal doesn't want his wife to abstain from rechitza and kishut in terms of the intimacy between a husband and wife, and therefore let him be mefered under the category of dvarim shebeino leveina, even if it doesn't match up to the category of inu nefesh, but it certainly is dvarim shebeino leveina. So the Gemara is vacillating about this point. Tashma, but the Gemara comes to the conclusion that Rabbi Yossi, ein elu nidre inui nefesh, and he's only saying that it's excluded from the category of inui nefesh, but avol, he's implying that dvarim shebeino leveino havyan. It would come under the category of dvarim shebeino leveino. So that means the Baal could be made for these Nedarim with regard to Rechitza, because it comes under Beino Veina. Because the Gemara is assuming that the language here of Rabbi Yossi is very telling. If he would have held that the Baal could never be made for Nedarim of Menias Rechitza, he just would have simply said, Ein Baal Yochel Hafer Klal. Well, what does he mean when he says Lo Yafer? He means lo yafer because of inui nefesh, but there is a possibility to be mefer if it's dvarim shebeino leveina, and the Gemara rejects it now. Dilma lidid hu kamarlu. Rabbi Yossi is talking to the Chachamim. Lididi, according to me, afilu dvarim shebeino leveina lo havyan. the Baal cannot be mefer har nedarim on minias rechitza, period. Absolutely. And it doesn't even qualify as dvarim shebeino leveina. But lididchu, according to you, according to the Chachamim damrisu, havyan nidre inui nefesh, oduli dienelu nidre inui nefesh. Even according to your shita, that the Baal could be made for these nedarim, but Bimoda concede to me that it's not midin inui nefesh. So the Gemara asks, "My." So we're still left with a suffix. Could Rabbi Yossi classify minias rechitza under the category of what? Of dvarim shebeino leveina. And according to the Shita Rabbi Yossi, can the Baal be made for nedarim as nedarim shebeino leveina? Dvarim shebeino leveina. And the Gemara says there's machlokas about this. Rav Ada bar Rav Omer meifir, and Rav Huna Omer eino meifir. According to Rav Ada, Rabbi Yossi would admit that the Baal could be meifir, minias, rechitza, and kishut under the category of dvarim shebeino leveina. And Rav Huna says no. The Baal cannot be mefer according to Rabbi Yossi, even under the category beino leveina. And the reason for this is we don't consider, according to Rabbi Yossi, minias rechitza neither as inui nefesh nor as dvarim shebeino leveina. That's Pei Aleph Omen Aleph. All right, then we'll stop here. And I'll take this opportunity to thank you and, to wish you
Yeah, sure.